Hello, my name is Adam Dickinson. I'm the author of Kingdom Phylum and Cartography and Walking from Brick Books, as well as The Polymers from House of Anansi Press and Anatomic from Coach House Books. I'm going to read a couple poems from Anatomic, which is my most recent book. And Anatomic has an interesting origin story. I wrote this book in response to a series of tests that I did. I tested myself, my body, for chemicals and microbes in order to look at how the outside writes the inside of our bodies, or how the environment affects us, both in terms of toxic chemicals in the environment, but also in terms of evolutionary history, the way in which microbes, we've developed relationships with microbes that are in fact necessary for our survival. So I looked into my blood, my urine, and my poop, and I saw the Anthropocene staring back at me. The sort of legacy of human effect on the planet through pollution and technology. So I wrote this book as an attempt to think about how these chemicals and microbes got into me. What are their stories? How are they biologically active? How are they related to politics and industry and history and culture in all kinds of different ways? So I'll read you a microbial poem and a chemical poem. Each of the poems have epigraphs that indicate the particular presence of a microbe on or in my body, or else the level of a particular chemical in my blood or urine. So this first poem I'll read is in response to some microbes that are affected by sugar, the abundance of sugar in one's diet. I was working with microbiologists as I was doing this project, and so I was helping them with their research as they were helping me. So I had to keep a food diary before I did my microbiome sequencing to figure out, what I was eating and how this might affect my microbiome. So I thought I had a pretty healthy diet, but it turns out I have a fairly typical Western diet that is high in salt and fat and sugar. So this poem is written in response to microbes that are affected by an abundance of sugar. The poem is called Mouthfeel, for Catini-bacteria mitsuaki and Bacteroides. Mouthfeel. The tongue map is wrong. There are buds down to the Commonwealth. What was the bliss point of African blood and the table sugars of Europe? Every year, spinach produces a sugar in its leaves comparable to the world's annual output of iron ore. Without hurting the taste, a young child can stand to keep a hand in cold water longer with a sweet mouth. The faster starch converts to Christianity, the quicker each outreach over police radios. Oh, my sweet tooth, my oatmeal raisin, my poison-tipped candy apple cart. Pleasure from food is the air waving goodbye in heat distorted like an inherited empire. In this way, we are closest to people who touch what we eat. Captives of loneliness stare into icing. I know enough about the cherry on top to lick around the sides. The second poem that I'll read is written in response to a class of chemicals known as PBDEs, or brominated flame retardants. These flame retardants were put in all kinds of consumer products, partly out of lobbying from the bromide industry after leaded gasoline was made illegal, because bromide was part of the production of leaded gasoline. So they're looking for an outlet for these products, and so they invented these flame retardants, fire retardants, that were put into children's clothes and all kinds of furnitures. But it turned out that these chemicals are actually quite toxic, but they leave a legacy in the bodies of people exposed to them. Brominated flame retardants leach from common products like televisions or carpets. Household dust is believed to be the greatest source of contamination for humans, and there's evidence that they are carcinogenic among other health problems. They've also were involved in a major contamination incident in 1973. Significant quantities of Firemaster, which was the brand name for brominated flame retardants, a version of them anyway. Massive quantities were accidentally mixed with livestock feed that was distributed to farms in Michigan, and so entered the food chain. All right, so this poem is called A Bromide, and it's in response to polybrominated diphenyl ether, number 47. My serum level is 5.623188 nanograms per gram lipid. The umbrella is the starting point for a larger obfuscation. A constant mist of tiny particles rains upward like neck hair at the cicada sex of a smoke alarm. Children outgrow the behaviors of cats, but for many years they are derelicts of skin flakes, stair runners, and upholstery. The average carpet smokes 3 packs a day. The glassy bits scratching your throat are leftover deterrents to predators. Dust is a conversation happening just out of earshot. It's the street talk of the endocrine and aldoron systems, a vector for the invectives of misdirection. Dust is a bunch of nickels your uncle gives you to get him another Goldschlager. My thoughts, like every other coagulation cascade, are made of melted lint and move around with the chirality of lost oven mitts. In the dusty barns of Michigan, the wrong bag of pale grit was mixed into cow feed. 9 million people ate Firemaster. My limbs tingle just out of broadcast range. Here come the industry standards to burn down the roofs of our mouths. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristian Enright, and I am an author with Turnstone, and I'll be reading from 2 collections today, both published by that press. So the first one I'm going to look at is in a book called Sonar that was published way back now, and it depicts an individual's movement through a kind of semi-invented madness that he sort of amalgamates with and eventually sort of emerges from. So this is a bit later in the collection, though I'm not giving you a spoiler. It's called The Author of a Scream, More Dialogic Polyphonic Yawp, Removal of Periods. So I'm just going to read this section and then I'll move on to the other book. The mind of unity cracks us like gradual lightning in glass thinking. The only clarity was following the sharding itself, edge as a sculptor would like it. Huddled like nerves, cold, waiting upon non sequitur leaps, languished in limbos, we are forever between judgments with our sincere confusion, weaving tentative synapse, holding ambiguous hammers. In an instant, we are lost in the small shadows of the healthy, those mannequins of marrow. We are not enamored in the ideological storefronts of consumer-bought reality. We pass like things in themselves with an explanatory carapace leak, snails to our own private life's too apparent confession breach. Reflective like a Socratic dialogue about immediacy, a fractal moment in the monumental, because what you feel will find its own form. What you were hiding counts. Our language is the adjective caught in the mime's life. We seem inexplicably trapped with numbness and its hibernation under the skin resulting from a stretched world of dreams and the presence of a monster in the crown of swollen conscience. With eyeball abacuses of what's the point strewn former patches in the wallet of your flat smiles endless, like a gut crudely extracted from a clown's body, an inner monster's face is a perfectly articulate lion posing as the emblem for angst's jowled yawn. As we try and catch scraps, the monster's crime scene is too hot and then cold for elegy. Shadows of children going to learn far too much too quickly reels by as you sit, like a king or queen of decadence in an otherwise stalled universe. The smallest shadow is trampled. The children play in the nightmare. You see their lunch pails and register baggage. And so we dream of a self impossible because we know that time will eat us in the hourglass. And so what is the symbol strong enough for preventing this diffusion of time? It is ourselves creatively declared in the fertile cutting flow of myth. With our imaginations fully intact, we declare ourselves of the braille text read by erosion's index finger. The more eroded part of us is the more a new one emerges, like an overweight Hallmark card's texts that water a vegetative heart with excess chicken broth. We forge descriptions of mountains that we climb every day, flames on the moth. Thank you. So that is from Sonar. And I'm just going to read now a more playful, it'd be hard to be less playful than that last one, poem from this collection, upcoming, entitled Postmodern Weather Report. It's called Surprise Break Folds Poem. And it goes like this. Prairie, your beauty comes in waves. Goodbye. The beauty of a god, invisible. You are a very thoughtful tourist, due to confusion. Like a Hemingway fish out of context, You are a great individual. There's Waldo. You can be so incredibly precise when you spit. When you go to the sated garden, weeds were there. And when you saw a vision of smoke, it was Moloch. Moloch was the one who had a mouth full of children's names. And here you go to the graveyard to seek life. And these graves are, with very easy metaphor, the very teeth. The teeth on the prairie are biting into the dirt. They naturally come with a taste of realism. You pull a cover of sky over your eyes to dream, populist surrealism. And what do we scrape the surface with? Populist expressionist stir. There are those who do not sense folds. They need to see mountains to increase it. So that concludes my 2 poems. Thank you everyone for listening to poetry. I'm really excited to be with all these other poets, and a huge thanks to Turnstone for their endurance in prairie writing. Thank you so much.